How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to On The Ball. Welcome back to another episode of Review the Prem. Me and Sim go head to head in predicting Premier League outcomes. This is week 2. From week 1, the score was 14-14, a complete stalemate after week 1. The way the scoring works, it's 5 points for a completely correct scoreline, 3 points for a correct result. No, 1 point for a correct result.
Yeah.
1 point for a correct result. And the star man is once you pick them, you cannot pick them for the rest of the season. And it's 5 points for a goal and 2 points for an assist. And let's get in to this week's action, starting off with Nottingham Forest against Sheffield United. It finished 2-1 to Nottingham Forest. We went both 2-0. So we both get a point there. But it was an interesting game, this one. I thought Forest did have the better of it. They were the better team and deserved the win. But Sheffield United did have their moments and, went forward a couple of times and could have got more than one goal, to be honest. But I think Nottingham Forest were deserved winners.
I felt like whenever Forest really needed the goal, they were able to come up with chances to score them. I think Sheffield United responded really well to going 1-0 down, an early goal by Taiwo Awoniyi with a header. And then Sheffield United did get back in the game. And to be fair, what a goal they scored as well. Hamer in that second half curls into the far corner from the edge of the area. And you're thinking maybe Sheffield United could go on and win the game. They did miss a couple of chances to maybe go 2-1 up. But late in the game, Forest did come on strong again, and then Sheffield United didn't really have the quality overall to really make their chances pay. And yes, they had a good showing, but at the end of the day, they were beaten by probably the better side, and it's a bit of a frustrating season so far for a start to the season for Sheffield United.
Yeah, only 2 games in. I think you kind of expect that, though, when you sell your best 2 players as well. Not only are they selling their best 2 players, but they're going into the Premier League as well. So I do feel like they need a couple of signings before the end of the window if they have any chance of survival, to be honest. But let's move on to Fulham against Brentford in the London derby. It finished 3-0 to Brentford at Craven Cottage. Sim went for 1-1. I went for 2-1 to Brentford, so I gain a point on this one. The Wissa and Mbeumo show, once again, unbelievable. These guys, since Ivan Toney's been out since the back end of the season, they have been banging in the goals. And Mbeumo seems to really be growing in stature. Wissa seems to be putting away all his chances at the moment. And I thought it was a well-deserved victory for Brentford, although Fulham on the day probably could have had a goal or 2, but Brentford again played really well.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot closer first half. It was quite an even game in that first half, both sides having minimal chances. But then what happened was Diop makes an absolutely catastrophic error to allow Wissa to round the keeper and score, pretty much playing him in a square pass on the edge of his own area. And that error really cost Fulham, I think, because in this kind of game, the worst thing you want to do is allow Brentford to have something to hold on to allow them to take the lead. And that's exactly, they have you where they want you at that point, because you have to come out a bit, you have to leave a bit more space. And that's exactly what Wissa and Mbeumo thrive on, that space in behind. And in that second half, it was destruction. Fulham absolutely got overrun. They couldn't deal with Brentford on the break. Tim Ream ended up getting sent off as well. And at the end, it ended up being a bit of a battering and a really bad day at the office for Fulham. Brilliant start to the season for Brentford. 4 points in 2 pretty tough games. But Fulham, look, they got the win in the first week against Everton, but quite luckily, and now a really bad defeat against Brentford at home. So all not looking great at the moment for Fulham, but Brentford are playing really, really well. Yeah,
and they travel to the Emirates next week as well, Fulham. You do kind of fear for them, to be honest. But moving on to Liverpool against Bournemouth. A 5-pointer all round here, as 3-1 to Liverpool was the scoreline, and we both guessed 3-1 to Liverpool. This was a game with a lot of contentious decisions. But first of all, Bournemouth take the lead early on. They started really well, but after that, Liverpool just took complete control and absolutely took them to the sword, to be honest, and came out deserved victors. But the 2 decisions, first of all, the penalty where Szoboszlai clearly dived for that penalty. I'm not sure why they don't look at that and, go to VAR and take away that penalty. And the second one is the Alexis McAllister sending off. Very harsh, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was a nonsense sending off. I don't think it was that dangerous. I don't think it was very high. I think he pretty much side-footed the ankle of the Bournemouth player. And I thought McAllister was extremely unlucky to get that red card. And it nearly cost Liverpool, but luckily for them, very soon after that red, they did make it 3-1, and that made the game easier to manage for them. In terms of the penalty from Szoboszlai, I don't think it was a penalty. I agree with you as well. I thought it was a dive from Szoboszlai. Very, very minimal contact, if any contact. But VAR in slowing it down, I guess because there was like the slightest bit of contact, I guess that was enough for them to decide that they should stick with the on-field decision. I thought that was very harsh on Bournemouth as well. On another day, referee doesn't give it and they move on. Bournemouth definitely came flying up the traps and looked to surprise Liverpool early doors, and they did that. They had a goal in the first minute ruled out, and then they obviously took the lead within a few minutes with a really nice finish from Semedo. They were looking to cause Liverpool problems, but to be fair to Liverpool, I thought they took control of the game. They kind of worked their way into the game. They started working out solutions to what Bournemouth were trying to do. And then I thought they were much of the better side for a majority of the game. Yes, at 3-1 and down to 10 men, Bournemouth did create some chances, and Alisson had to be at his best to keep the score at 3-1. But I think Liverpool showed why they might struggle at some points, but I think they also showed why they're such a team to be feared, because I thought Szoboszlai was running the show. I thought the front three was so dangerous with their individual quality. Luis Diaz's goal was absolutely brilliant, his acrobatic effort. And I think at the end of the day, they probably deserved the victory, but definitely there are some elements of the game you're like, okay, you understand why they need that number 6 desperately, but that front five is just absolutely devastating.
Yeah, the new signing Endo comes on in the second half after the sending off, and I think with McAllister banned for next game, it actually might be a bit of a blessing to have this central defensive midfielder come in for the next game and have a bit of, it'll be a bit more harder to play through that Liverpool midfield, in my opinion, with Endo there. So we'll see what happens in the next game. Next up is Wolves against Brighton. 4-1 to Brighton, another battering for Brighton. Well, not for Brighton, but at the expense of Wolves, but I don't know how I'm supposed to word this one, but Brighton give out another battering. Let's just give that one 4-1. 4 goals scored once again for Brighton. 2-0 I went for, Sim went for 1-0. Both get a point there. But look, it was interesting because I thought the first half Wolves were giving as good as they were getting, to be honest. But it was just an absolute wonder goal by Karu Mitoma that opened the scoring. But then in the second half, the floodgates kind of opened. Wolves did have their kind of chances in the second half, but I thought Brighton were just so clinical and really good.
Yeah, again, I thought Wolves were so unlucky in that first half to go in on 1-0 down. I thought they had so many chances to make Brighton pay. Fabio Silva having a 1-on-1, Aït-Nouri having good opportunity as well, blazing over the bar. On another day, if they had more finishing ability, they would have definitely gone in at half-time, especially level, maybe even in the lead. And again, it's that lack of clinical edge that Wolves just always have that cost them yet again. But yeah, Brighton had that bit of individual quality in that first half to take the lead. And as I said, that in the second half, they really took Wolves to the sword. Wolves kind of had to commit more players forward. That's exactly what Brighton want. They wanted Wolves to open up a bit, and Solly March was in clinical form. I thought Enciso was absolutely brilliant, picking up the spaces and really opening up Wolves, and he laid on 2 assists on the day as well. And they've just got those really clever attacking players, Brighton, where if you're not on them and you're not focusing on stopping them, they can really tear you to shreds. And that's exactly what they did in that second half. And it was an easy victory in the end for Wolves. But Wolves, again, similar to the first game, will feel like they'll come away from that game, maybe less so than the first game. They'll come away thinking, if we could only finish, would be a much more different result.
Yeah, we got to talk about Pervis Estupiñán. Is he the best left back in the league right now? A goal and assist in this game. I think he got an assist in the last game as well. Performing out of his skin, not just this season, but last season as well. But I think he's taken it up a notch this season so far in the opening 2 games. Is there a better left back in this league than him?
Right now, it's tough to think of one. You got Robertson, but Estupiñán's probably in better form than Robertson at the moment. So it's very difficult to say. Well, definitely not one on better form. I definitely think because he had a brilliant end to the season last season as well, Estupiñán, and he's really carried that form into this season. He's so strong, energetic. He's good going back and he's good going forward as well. He's becoming a really complete fullback, and maybe there's another 60 million coming Brighton's way at some point.
Yeah. I mean, Chelsea are probably kicking themselves for spending that money on Marc Cucurella when they could have signed Estupiñán for like 15 million, 20 million.
They'll sell Estupiñán and they'll bring another guy in for 5 million who's probably going to become the best left back in the world. That's just how it works at Brighton. Unbelievable
scouting network that they do have at Brighton. But let's move on to the Tottenham game. 2-0 against Manchester United at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Both of us going for 2-2 draws. And you know what? It probably could have easily been 2-2 in this game. I thought the first half, Man United were well on top, dominant. Spurs couldn't really get out of our half for the majority of it, but we rallied and we had a really strong finish to the half, hitting the bar and hitting the post. And as soon as we came out for the second half, Spurs, I thought we completely destroyed Man United and blew them away. And I think we were deserved victors in the end.
Yeah, it was a really great tactical game, I felt, throughout the game, Ten Hag versus Ange. And I thought first half, Ten Hag really came up with a plan to disrupt Ange ball. The fullbacks were inverting for Tottenham, and Man United very much concentrated all their players centrally. It was very hard for Tottenham to have that build-up play from the back, and Man United were winning the ball back in really good areas and then transitioning very quickly and creating a lot of chances, and they should have probably had a penalty as well. Very unlucky not to have a penalty for the handball. Romero, Bruno, very, very unhappy with that after the game. But at the end of the day, if you don't take your chances, especially the chances they created, then you can't really complain when things start to go against you. And Tottenham did take control in the second half. They switched things up. They moved the fullbacks a bit wider to allow for easier build-up play. And all of a sudden, Tottenham did start to take control. Basuma and Papamatar started completely bossing that midfield. And then once we did start to get the ball into the final third, I thought our build-up play in the final third was absolutely fantastic. And we were able to play the ball around Man United more often than not, create so many problems. We did get a bit of luck for a couple of the goals, obviously a deflection for the cross for Sarr's goal. Ben Davis's goal ended up being an own goal. But I thought we earned our luck with the chances we were creating, the positions we were taking up. And I think at the end of the day, Man United will feel a bit aggrieved that they didn't get any goals in the first half. But the second half, I think Tottenham completely bossed it, and it was a fantastic victory in the end.
Yeah, in terms of the refereeing decisions, one with the Romero's handball, yes, it definitely should have been a penalty, but, a week ago, Man United gave away a chance which should have definitely been a penalty as well. So, I mean, you win some and you lose some, don't you, with these refereeing decisions as they go on. But there was another one as well where Cuti Romero was involved with Lisandro Martinez. Did you think that was a penalty?
I think it probably was a penalty. I don't think it was as blatant as the Man United one, but I think on the balance, I think it was probably a tight call. But I think looking at it again, Martinez goes in for Romero, doesn't really make a clean challenge, doesn't touch the ball. So I do think at the end, if the referee would have given that penalty, I don't think VAR steps in and says that's a mistake. I do think it probably would have stood as a penalty. But it was a bit more of a tighter call.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're just talking about refereeing decisions every single week at the moment, how they're getting it wrong. I mean, with the implementation of VAR and the way things are going and the constant rule changes, do you think the constant rule changes just confuse everyone more than anything?
I think definitely the fans. I think the player and not to say the players, but definitely the referees. I don't think it confuses them. I think they're applying it, but I think it causes a lot of confusion for viewers and fans when the rules are constantly changing and you're having to keep up with what the latest set of rules are, and then you see things on the pitch that seem to be inconsistent, and then but then you ask the referee and they're just saying they're applying the new rule changes. So definitely creates a lot of confusion. Maybe if that was put to bed earlier on, we wouldn't be having these as many complaints as we do have, but I definitely think that is a problem.
Yeah. Let's move on to the late night kickoff, which was Saturday night, Man City against Newcastle. 1-0 to Manchester City on the day. Both of us going for 2-1 to City, so we both get a point on this one. It was an interesting game. I did expect a bit more from Newcastle, to be honest, especially with Man City had a really taxing game going down to penalties in midweek in the Super Cup against Sevilla. But I thought Man City, with a wonder goal from Alvarez, by the way, were deserved victors.
Yeah, they got their opening goal, and it's almost like after that goal, they took control of the game. And Newcastle to be restricted to 0.29 XG just shows how much control Man City had throughout the game. Man City only had 1.01, which is, for a Man City side known for creating loads of opportunities and having a lot of the ball and having loads of shots, you'd expect at home, even against a good team like Newcastle, them to have a bit more. So I think Newcastle deserve quite a bit of credit for containing Man City's attack. But at the end of the day, they didn't really show enough, especially on the counter-attack, to really hurt City. They really didn't create that many opportunities. And I think they'll be a bit disappointed because they'll probably fancy themselves, even though it's a good City side, to create more openings than they did. But I think they'll take they'll take the positives away from that game, how close it was, and the fact they restricted Man City to very few good goal-scoring opportunities. And it was a hard-fought victory for Man City. It wasn't an easy game. So, look, Newcastle going into it didn't expect any points. They didn't get any, but they'll take heart. That was a very close game.
Yeah, fair point. Next up, Villa against Everton. Finished 4-0 to Aston Villa on the day. Both of us going for 2-0 to Aston Villa. So again, just a point each here in this one. But I thought Aston Villa were well the better team in this one. Obviously, the scoreline reflects that as well. Everton did have a few chances to go forward themselves and get a goal. But I thought they were just so dominant, Aston Villa, for the majority of the game. John McGinn opens the scoring. A few moments later, Douglas Luiz gets a penalty. And within 25 minutes, the game's pretty much done at 2-0. 1-0, and then they get another 2 goals in the second half. So, I mean, after a really disappointing first day of the season against Newcastle, they hit back with an impressive 4-0 victory.
Yeah, and well-deserved, really dominant. I thought Everton were atrocious throughout the 90 minutes. I think Sean Dyche, looking at that, will be extremely worried because they started that...
They capitulated, didn't they?
Yeah, they did completely. And I thought they played really well in the first game against Fulham. They were giving them a lot of trouble. But at the end of the day, they didn't score, and they ended up conceding a late goal and losing that game 1-0, and they didn't get the result maybe they needed. But going into this game, you would have thought if they can continue to play like that, they might pick up some good results. But I think they went into this game looking to contain Villa, and Villa usually kind of struggle against teams like Everton in a low block and they have to break them down. But I actually thought they opened them up time after time. It was very easy for Aston Villa to create opportunities. A lot of focus obviously was on Moussa Diaby going to this game, new signing, playing quite centrally for Villa. But it was actually Leon Bailey who stepped up in this one. People forget about him. Obviously, he was a good winger for Leverkusen, and he ended up getting goal and assist. He had a really bright game in his own right, and I think if they can recreate that Bailey and Diaby dynamic that Leverkusen had a couple of years ago, that I think that they could be in for a real treat, Aston Villa, especially on the counter-attack. But I thought they were fantastic with some of the moves they were making. But I thought Everton just made it way too easy for them. Like, if you're going to be sitting low block and you're going to be trying to contain Villa, you've got to make it difficult for them to create opportunities, and they were just far too open. It was far too easy for Villa, and I think Sean Dyche will be absolutely furious with that performance, and also a blow because Calvert-Lewin played 30 minutes and then it looks like he had a broken cheekbone during the game, so that'll be a massive worry for him as well.
Yeah, when he walked off, you could see his whole side of his face was swollen up. It didn't look pretty, but a lot of work cut out for Everton this season, for sure. Next up is West Ham against Chelsea in the London derby. 3-1 to West Ham. Sim went for 1-1. I went for 2-1 to Chelsea, and I don't think West Ham deserved anything out of this game, to be honest. I thought Chelsea were the better team. I thought in the first half, they were very unlucky not to go in ahead. I thought Chelsea completely outplayed them in that first half. Second half, I mean, I thought Chelsea had control of the game without creating too many chances, but I just thought Chelsea were much the better team throughout, but they would be quite down on themselves because they didn't create too much in that second half.
If I was Chelsea looking at that, I think I agree. First half, I think the missed penalty really cost them. If they were to go into that game 2-1 up and taken the lead against West Ham, and then West Ham don't have something to cling on to and they've got to open up a bit, I think that would have really played into Chelsea's hands. I think they were much of the better team in the first half. West Ham got a goal out of nothing for Aguerd, and then Chukwuemeka deservedly equalised with a brilliant finish on the left-hand side. And then they really piled the pressure. Sterling was running riot on that right-hand side. They were causing all sorts of problems. They were getting in time and time again. And then that penalty seemed to be a reward for all their good effort, Chelsea. But Enzo missing it really switched the momentum. And in that second half, I actually thought Chelsea were really poor in that second half. I would be quite worried looking at that second half performance for Chelsea, in my opinion, because West Ham got a goal against a run of play, but I did think it was really poor defensively from Chelsea, allowing Antonio to get that run in, and it was a great finish at the end of the day. But I thought it went 2-1, and then West Ham go down to 10 men, Aguerd gets sent off, and you're thinking, okay, this is perfect for Chelsea to really come on and win this game. But they only got 0.36 XG among that whole second half, and that is not good enough when you're playing against 10 men. And I know West Ham was sitting deep and making it very difficult, but when you got the talent that Chelsea have on the pitch, you got to expect to create a lot more chances than they did. And the fact that they were really they really lacked that creativity, and they've really lacked any sort of chance creation against 10 men has got to be a source of worry. And in the latter stage of the game, West Ham obviously get that penalty, not helped by the Moises Caicedo had one of the worst cameos for a debut I've ever seen. So that obviously things will improve, but he came on in 20 minutes and just looked completely off the pace, giving the ball away in silly positions, making fouls, obviously really poor. I thought the challenge was a ridiculous challenge for the penalty as well. So obviously that's something to look at, but it's a worrying second half from Chelsea in my opinion. But first half they were really unlucky not to go in the lead.
Yeah, I don't know. I look at it a bit differently. Yeah, it wasn't a great performance from the second half, but I did feel like that they controlled it for the most of it. And West Ham, I get that, but I mean, it's also hard sometimes. Sometimes it's harder to score against 10 men than it is against 11 men, especially when the 11 men are chasing the game. When West Ham had 10 men, they'd literally just put everyone behind the ball, make it very compact, and a very hard team like that to score against anyway. So I felt like it was easier in a way for them to score against 11 men than it was against 10 men. And I think like what I've seen from Chelsea so far, in the first game against Liverpool, I've seen good things from them. In the second game against West Ham as well, I've seen good things from them, especially in that first half. And you've got to remember, it's only the second game Pochettino has taken in a competitive game. So in my opinion, they're only going to get better than this. And if this is a starting block, I don't think it's too much of a problem for Chelsea. And I think they're only going to get better. And I think they're going to have a good season, actually.
Look, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying in that second half, I thought they were poor, and I thought that was a bit concerning. But the first two games, it's only 2 games into the new manager's tenure. You're not going to be too overly critical, and they have played well in parts. But I just thought against 10 men, they could have done a lot more than they did.
Fair enough. And last but not least, it's Crystal Palace against Arsenal, which finished 1-0 on the night. Sim went for 1-0, so he gets a big fat 5-pointer. I went 2-0, so I only get 1 point on this one. Look, Arsenal were heavily dominant throughout the game. Even when the sending off happened, Tomiyasu sending off, bloody hell, what a ridiculous sending off, by the way. The first booking for time wasting, Havertz wastes 15 seconds, I think it was, and Tomiyasu wasted 8 seconds. And Tomiyasu is the one that gets booked. I have no idea why. And then the second one, I mean, it was a foul. I mean, he has his hands on his back and pushes him a little bit, but a yellow card I thought was a bit harsh for that one. So I don't know. I think that sending off was definitely very harsh on Tomiyasu. And after that, I think Palace did take control of the game, but they just could not break down Arsenal for love nor money. And Eze was trying to push and trying to do stuff. And Jordan Ayew as well kind of impressed me for a lot of the game, but they just couldn't break that down Arsenal whatsoever. And I think Arsenal came out deserved dominant victors.
Yeah, I think Arsenal definitely deserved the lead when they took it. And Nketiah having a number of opportunities, and he'll probably feel a bit annoyed that he didn't take
that big call about?
Yeah, it was way too close to goal to try and dink, and then also he got behind Anderson at one point and hit the post, and he was looking really energetic, to be fair, in Nketiah, but he must be a bit annoyed that he didn't get on the score sheet. But he also ended up winning the penalty after a quick free kick was taken. It was a clever bit of a play from Arsenal, and it was deserved that they took the lead during that game. They had control possession. I don't think they opened up Palace on too many occasions, but when they did, they seemed to be very good opportunities. And then obviously the sending off does change the game, and it was quite a harsh sending off. I think Arsenal probably have a right to feel a bit aggrieved about it. But to their credit, I think that Arsenal really did kind of batten down the hatches and were really solid defensively. But I got to say, I thought Palace really did lack a bit of real quality in that final third to really test Arsenal. In the stoppage time, they did have a couple of opportunities. Tyrick Mitchell fires over the bar from a good chance. Edouard as well has a header from around the penalty spot, which he should have really turned on target. So they had a couple of opportunities to speak about, but at the end of the day, apart from Eze, there was no one really providing quality, and that's got to be a bit of a worry for Palace because they were so heavily relying on him. Look, Olise's got to come back, so I'm sure that will happen. They'll have that bit of quality once he's there. But without him, when they're just relying on Eze, it's like I felt like throughout the other parts of the team, they're just really struggling to have that quality.
Yeah, I actually felt that Jordan Ayew played really well in that first half, and he was causing Arsenal problems. And I thought he was actually better in that first half than Eze was, to be honest.
He did all right. He did some good runs. He had his one real opportunity he did have to take on Saliba. He overran it, and Saliba got the challenge. Although it was a phenomenal challenge from Saliba, but Ayew in that position, you'd bank him to get a shot off, and he couldn't do it. I think he caused. I think that's just
unbelievable defending. I wouldn't put that down on Ayew.
But I think he was good, but he didn't really create anything, did he?
No, but I mean, neither did Eze, to be honest.
Yeah.
But in terms of some performers, Declan Rice, I thought probably his best performance in an Arsenal shirt so far. And Kai Havertz, I thought another pretty much no-show from him. I thought every time the ball comes to him, it seems as though Arsenal's play just completely slows down. And I'd be expecting more from Kai Havertz if I'm Mikel Arteta.
I agree. He's not had a very easy start. It doesn't seem to know what his best position is still. And I felt like in centre mid, you're expecting him to get involved in the build-up play. You just don't see enough of that from Havertz. So definitely food for thought for Arteta.
And let's move on to the star men. Sim went for Awoniyi from Nottingham Forest, who got a goal on the night. So he gets a big fat 5-pointer for that one. And I went for Ollie Watkins, who got you got nothing in a 4-0 victory. Like, what are the chances?
He did win a penalty, but it doesn't count as an official assist.
No, it doesn't. So, I mean, I can't believe they win 4-0 and Watkins does pretty much nothing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shock.
But that's
I'll
the
take
way.
it.
That's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So I've picked so far Bruno Fernandes and Ollie Watkins, and I've drawn blanks both weeks. Sim's gone for Pedro, João Pedro, and Awioni, and he's got a goal for each week so far. So we end off this week. Sim is in the lead, 33-25, but a long old season to go. So let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on the games, and we'll see you next time.